Good morning, good afternoon. I thought we could begin with a little bit of movement. I've been doing Lujong, every morning before I get going with practice, and just doing a little bit before we go into what we're doing can be nice. So I'll stand up. You don't have to. You can do wherever you are. Um, but, so we'll start with just moving the ankles and we're really just bringing awareness into the joints, listening to the body as we move. And we move up to the hips, changing directions. And then up to the shoulder, up and back, up and forward. And dropping the head, looking to the left. Dropping the head, looking to the right. Dropping the head forward. And lifting and dropping a couple times. Looking from the furthest edge of our vision up and around. Looking out at the fringe of the vision with the eyes as we turn the head 3 times. And shaking. Wiggling. Kind of fun to wiggle your feet, then your knees, then your thighs, then your hips, then your belly, then your chest, then your arms, then your head. Then come back down. Wiggle your head, your shoulders, your arms, your chest, your hips, your legs, your knees, your feet. And then we just do a gentle gathering the wind element. You can kind of lunging with the movement. Feeling the wind through your fingers. And we feel the quality of the wind. Thoughts and feelings are like wind in space. And then bringing the fingers together like a little circuit. Move our hands up and down, changing direction. And then moving in and out, changing direction. And then a little twisting the arms, letting it relax and move like that. And then the next, placing the thumb at the base of the ring fingers with the 2 fingers out. Yep, exactly. That's great, Janet. Perfect. And then we hee hee, ha ha. We look hee hee, ha ha through the tips of our fingers and the space between. Ha ha, hee hee, ha ha, hee hee, ha ha. This also can be done forward. Hee hee, ha ha, hee hee, ha ha. And then we come down. Ha! Clearing. Ha! 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 looking at the finger pointing, laying one pointed with the extended finger. And then jumping up, put the fingers over the head like this. And we bend the thighs until you feel a certain pain or burn. And then you just rest in as if your body is a blue, azure blue Vajra of light. In that searingness, you identify it as a kind of power or energy. And then, ha! Ha! Now, usually, we would have begun with clearing the stale air. I did that earlier, but we can do that all together, too. I tend to do that with a window open or some fresh air. It really makes a difference. That said, it's fine to do in a room. And there's many ways to do it. Normally, we put our thumbs at the base of the ring finger meridian, that channel, and put a slight pressure. And when we breathe in, and then we breathe all the way out, collapsing the belly towards the spine till there's like almost a gasping at the end. And then all the way out. And then there are various different elaborate versions, but the one that I like to do is placing the thumb at the base of the ring finger in my right hand, and then placing that ring finger on the left nostril and breathing in and out. And blocking just with the nose. It's 2 times. And then switching sides. All right. So today I thought we could explore a little bit more about the day as a lifetime. And in particular, the renunciation of um, the future and the past. There is always time that we can spend doing structured practice thinking about the future and thinking about the past when that's uh, warranted, like in doing therapy or doing a self-reflection practice. I think a lot of these things, though, we have to be very precise about what we're doing, when we're doing it, and when we're not doing something. And so that's kind of the container or protection, right? That's how we protect our heart and mind. If we don't have a clear enough understanding of how to protect ourselves, we can get overwhelmed and we can get lost. And our practice techniques will not be as effective as they could be. And again, when we think we have endless amounts of time, it's like, who cares? We'll get to it later. But as we know, your whole life, time is passing. Where has it gone? Where has that moment we just had gone? We were doing Lujang. That's gone. Right now, everything is vanishing like the imprint of a bird in the sky. Just doing that, noticing the present moment, noticing the vanishing. So if we look at the four reminders in this second gesture, there's life only happens now. Death only happens right now. Karma only arises right now. Samsara and nirvana are happening only right now. These four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma are more like the four experiences that remind us that the Dharma only happens now. These are very high view of the four reminders. And it's this motivation that this is it. This is our time together. This is it. We don't know that we'll have another time together. And to live from a place that's not, we don't want to terrify ourselves, right? We don't want to overwhelm ourselves, but also we don't want to lull ourselves into a false sense of security, right? It's an interesting balance. It's that middle way. We don't want to activate and terrorize ourselves, traumatize ourselves. We don't also want to just lull ourselves into a sleep, a fogginess and I'll do it tomorrowness. So there's this quality of this is it. And when I do this gesture, it's a summary of all that. Like, this is it. And I think the more I do it, the more I empower it to mean like, this is it. And really feel that. And again, the more we do it, the more we empower it, the more real it gets. It's also, I want to say, the confidence and the proclamatory quality of this. Like, I, as the practitioner, with love and devotion for the Dharma, intentionally enact the mudra action of the Vajra clearing, right? It's an empowerment. We're not victims of this. We're not like, oh shit, I had to do this thing, right? It's like, I've decided to do this, to take into my own hands the fact that death comes at any moment, right? That we don't know. I've taken that into my own hands, and instead of being afraid of it and ignoring it, or being neurotically afraid of it and like getting overloaded and activated by it, there's just this middle way of like, what is precious, what is important, what really matters. And if we don't develop our motivation this way in terms of impermanence, right, we will likely err to the side of assuming we have more time than we do. And here's the good news. Even if we all live long, beautiful, healthy lives, which I personally aspire to right now in this moment, and request Amitayus, the Buddha of long life, to bless all of us with long, healthy, good lives for this purpose of benefiting beings through Dharma practice. That said, we just simply don't know, do we? So so we have to be serious about this stuff. And when we do this, and why I'm starting our practice today with Luzhang was to wake up the channels and open the energy so that we are not, possibly, hopefully, not really activated or on the edge of being overloaded or freaked out or, lost in our emotions and energy, but that we move the energy, and then we can be quite adult about confronting an existential crisis of the uncertainty of our own death, right? If we don't feel safe and the energy is not flowing in a healthy way, it's hard to practice the Dharma like this. So that leads us into the next point, which is, how do we take care of ourselves? How do we see each day as a lifetime? If I say to you, we're going to have another 10,000 days of life, or 8,000 or 15,000, depending how long we live, right? Or less, we don't even know. That's if we live a long, natural, healthy life, right? Yeah, rough estimate, right? It's 365 days in a year. If we lived 10 years, that's 3,650, right? Something like that. Something. So it's kind of like, okay, if we live 20 years, we're at 6 or 7, 8. Maybe we'll live more than that. I don't know. Maybe we won't. Who knows? So it's a really interesting point to just bring a cap on it at the best case and say, look, this is it. This is our magical time together. And as such, I'm devoted to you for that entire time, for the rest of my life in this body, to work with you as much as you want to work. That's my commitment to you and to myself. But one of the things that I feel a burden or responsibility, therefore, is to make sure that we are constantly starting over and constantly going deeper as a sangha, right? So that we're taking care of each other, because it's I feel responsible. I think we all feel responsible for each other's spiritual growth, right? And for that to be real, that this time is really used. So obviously, if I talk about 10,000 days or 3,000 days, or even say, let's bring it down to 300 days. Holy shit. If you told me I only have 300 days left, I might as well say I'm going to die in the next minute. Right? I mean, for me, I don't know about you, but from my side, I'd be like, whoa, okay, we're here. This is it. Now, of course, what's important, right? And what we get down to often is relationships, Dharma practice, emotional, like compassion for the people we love, like meaningful stuff, deep spiritual truths. Yesterday I
Nick,
was with my what?
excuse me a second. I just wanted to let everybody know I'm here, but unfortunately, I ate very quickly before
Yeah.
I got in. I'm really nauseous now with the Luzhong. I just didn't think about it.
Oh,
So I'm here, and I'm hoping my stomach will settle down soon. But I'm listening.
oh, Lynn, of course. I'm so sorry. I should probably put
No,
a
no, I
warning.
normally
Yeah, no, no.
no, normally I eat a little bit earlier. It's okay. It's
No,
just a
I
reflex
know.
thing.
I
I was a little too
No, no.
vigorous.
Oh, I'm sorry, dear. That's okay. You're with us. That's fine. And thanks for telling us. And I hope you feel better soon. I just want to say also, um, just because it's, if I haven't said it recently, I should say this. Doing Luzhong on a full belly can do that, right? So I didn't say that, but I just want to refresh that, right? For
Nick,
all of us. Don't,
I already know that. So,
okay, dear. Okay. Just making sure.
yep.
Yeah, that's good. Good. So, what we're going to do is just take a moment. We're going to work with the second gesture on our own for just a few minutes, and then we'll come back together and see. So, this is a meditation period, but we're mixing it in, and then we'll come back to some of the content. But I do feel like just spending some time and really working with any of the four, right? The first one, looking to the right, seeing where the hand was and realizing the preciousness of this life, that impermanence, time is passing, right? Or we can work with looking straight ahead, the hand coming before us, the Vajra clearing, or the sense of the vanishing act, that our entire life keeps vanishing and we're just right now. That death isn't something in the future, it happens in each moment. Looking to the left, the hand coming into view, the arising of karma is expression of groundlessness. What we cannot control, things arise that we can't prevent or control. And then the last one, looking at the hand as we turn our head, this notion of the inseparability of samsara nirvana, or the sense of timelessness, that both time is moving and not moving. It's kind of beyond concept, right? So whichever one comes up, we'll just do this for a few minutes together. And now, just to seal that session, we can, if you like, offer uh, just the dance for that gesture. So what this means is we will stand, or if you don't have to do this, but if you want to, if it feels good, and we just take a moment, opening the pecor, seeing the second gesture, feeling it, placing the hand on the heart, and looking up to the left with devotion to the impermanence teaching, and then soaring in the confidence of vanishing. And then we can bow. Beautiful. So is that is a special exploration of motivation to heighten awareness regarding the preciousness of our time, the poignancy of our condition, the bravery to look at these truths, and the resulting vision that allows us to exert ourselves in Dharma practice. There are so many things we can do with our time, right? We all have many activities or things we like to do or things that are enjoyable, things we need to relate to. So in the modern world, to find a way to practice Dharma with momentum, with regularity, with enough Dharma practice that we're actually, it's sort of like, what's really a great analogy for this is if you have a wood stove, right? And it's winter. If you don't put enough in, you really do notice it. You will be very cold. If you put enough in, you'll be warm. If you put too much in, you're sweating and you have to go outside. So I think that's equated to in our practice, if we're in a comfort zone where the practice is just like barely not interfering with our comfort at all, and it sort of like keeps us cozy and we don't do too much because we're just trying to like focus on the stuff, feeling good and having a good day, there's usually a lack of sense of impermanence, right? We're like, I have all the time, I'm in my comfort zone. The growing zone, that space outside of the comfort zone, is like, okay, I'm practicing a little more now because there's a little discomfort, realizing that I don't have endless time. That, and this is not a critique, or I'm not here to, that, me, this is not how I work. It was shame or like, I don't want to scare anyone into anything. That's just not how I motivate, right? I come from love. That's how I motivate. But but these traditional teachings definitely tried to scare people into like, wake up. This is it. You don't have the time you think you do. Get to work. This is precious. So I kind of temper that a little bit with like, yeah, that's true, but don't freak yourself out, right? It's a balance. We need you as a precision instrument so that you can practice Dharma. but we honor impermanence and connect with it in order to rouse deeper motivation so that we can burst the gravity of our comfort zone. And that means making time, making room for Dharma practice to exist in our life ecosystem so that we're not sort of thinking that's something I can kind of put aside, or assuming we can because I'll have time later, or right? Now, if we do too much in the overwhelm zone and we're pushing ourselves too hard, we're not balanced. And what happens is, I said in the analogy of the fireplace, you get the cabin so hot that you have to go outside, right? So you literally have to leave, and it's a metaphor, but the idea is that you have to leave your practice because you're just too overwhelmed. You're too hot and sweaty. You're like, whoa, this is too much growth, too fast. I'm pushing too hard, right? So putting the right amount of wood in the stove, giving the right amount of heat, that's the middle zone, right? The growing zone. There's enough heat, but not too much. You're not cold. And obviously, you could flip this analogy. If I'm saying comfort is it's just warm enough, the growing zone could be it's a little cold, and the overwhelm zone is you're freezing, right? You could flip it and say, if we want to just, so in the middle, it's like maybe you're a little cold, maybe it's a little challenging, but you're not using as much wood. Maybe you didn't get enough wood for the winter and you have to kind of be a little portion towards the end. That actually happened with me, and so there was this quality of like, all right, do I really need to put in the wood, or is it going to get colder in a week? So you bundle up, and and I guess what they always used to say in these songs with like Milarepa leaving Marpa would be like, are you willing to endure hardships for the Dharma? And Milarepa would be like, yes, I am. But Milarepa had mega motivation, right? His whole world fell apart, and all he had left was the Dharma. And people, revere Milarepa as this great practitioner. Sure, absolutely. But that's an extraordinary situation. For those of us that are still living in the world, what is our Dharma teaching, right? Because Milarepa, I love Milarepa's teaching. I love it so much. But a lot of times I think about it and I go, it's not super applicable to a person who's a householder practitioner. It is applicable in some ways. There are definite like overlaps for sure, and I love that. And we can talk about that. But essentially, there are extremes where it's like, no, this is different. This is a different practice. So what I'm concerned about for us is developing something where we feel really empowered to make our day, one day, each day, a, a relationally sustainable, attuned to our emotions, what waves are coming through us, attuned to our environment, attuned to our responsibilities of our life and the outer world, and attuned to the changes in the energy during the day. And can we look at the day as an art form each day? So I thought we would take about 5 minutes just contemplating this. Like, how might I do this? What are some ways I already do this? I know we're not starting this conversation. It's not the first time we've talked about this. So I'm not going to pretend that. For those of us that have already talked about this a bit and thought about this group here, I'm just curious, maybe we could all take about 5 minutes contemplating how do we do this, and then we can all share. How do you make your day an art form, or design it as a life, as a daytime, a day as a lifetime, right? And then if you have ways you mix in the gestures and your practice, that would be lovely to hear too. I'll share mine too. I'll share with you my version, but I want all of us to kind of share and learn from each other, because it's amazing how different perspectives and things might actually open something up around this, right? Like when I hear one of you say something, oh, that's a cool thing that you do. That's, so this is a sharing. So 5 minutes of contemplation, and then we'll move into some sharing. How have we been relating to this? And if you were like, Nick, I did 5 minutes of contemplation and I have a lot of questions, bring it on. Don't have to know, but if you do have things, share them. And then if you have questions as well, share them. So there's no right or wrong here. It's more like, let's flow into this. So we'll begin. contemplating how do I regard each day as a lifetime and integrate practice and my worldly responsibilities. How am I doing that? How am I struggling with that? How is that going well? Ding! How do I regard the morning, the middle of the day, the afternoon, the evening? How do I see different practices coming and going? What responsibilities do I have? How do I attune to what I need as I go through the day? What elements are helpful to be present in my practice? And when I miss certain elements, what happens to me? Ding! So if you feel excited to share, please do. That contemplation was just a space of time to start thinking about it. You don't have to have come to anything decisive or had any important anything, or you may have had some insight. But the key is, as we talk about it with each other, we'll explore more. And what I'll be doing in the second half of the gathering is I'm going to try and set up a thing where I can draw on the screen and show you certain ways of looking at the day and practices, and we'll kind of discuss, we'll keep dialoguing as I do that, so we'll be able to go through this in much more detail. But I just wanted to sort of hit the level of first thought, best thought, or current challenges, current inspirations. So we'll start there. We don't have to be comprehensive, we have more time. But what comes up when you think about this?
Well, I know for me, it just showed me that what works for me is when I have enough spaciousness to digest, I would say, digest my day, digest the Dharma, digest my life. And I actually often do pretty well in the morning and the evenings. But midday, when I start getting caught up, it's just a lot more challenging. So yet the challenge is also in terms of spaciousness is how to let go, the whole FOMO, fear of missing out of opportunities, letting go of possibilities, and releasing and staying with the feelings of what if I miss out on something, or what if I don't do something in the way that I usually want to do things, like fully engaged in the way that you quote unquote should be. So just working with those. But spaciousness is something that both works. It's really important for me, and it can be challenging.
Beautiful.
Guess I'll go next. I think for me, a rhythm of practice is really good for me, and thankfully Janet has the morning meditation, and we have the sangha doing the gestures, and so for me that's really critical, to keep. I really miss it if I don't, if I miss a session or whatever. I can tell there's a difference. I'm not as aware, or I'm not as awake, it seems like, during the day. And then, but there's other times that I feel, pretty spontaneous, like if I just go for a walk in the park, then I will attune to feeling grateful, seeing the blessings, and feeling grateful for my life and for being in this magical world and how sacred everything is. So that happens, particularly when I go for a walk. But I've found that for some reason more and more I'm just doing this during the middle of the day. Like if I'm driving, my hand will just kind of rest here, and it just feels really awesome. It's like I feel like it relates to this gesture, kind of that feeling, but also just coming into the heart, kind of. And then for me, something I don't know why, but my practice, part of it, I think, is I listen to Dharma talks all night long. It's just kind of weird, but and I fall asleep that way too, but then I wake up several times during the night, and I always, put it on another Dharma talk, or sometimes it just continues. And I think that affects me somehow, because I really, it's a space and time when I'm really just kind of quiet, and I can really, if I am awake and listening to it, it's like it really sinks in. I can feel what the Dharma talk is about, or it seems like I can relate to it. But I am curious about, you said what to me recently, Nick, that I need to go on a longer retreat, or figuring out, how can I be on more of a retreat in my daily life here, just, every day practice type thing. So I've been pondering that quite a bit.
I'm just putting these sort of question summaries in the chat for us for later. So I don't mean it to be distracting, but I thought I'd keep a little note of what each, because just. Okay, great.
I was going to share a little bit about how I do that. It's something that Nick shared with me, and I have a feeling he might be sharing it later, so I won't share that. But just the intentionality of like writing it down. Like, what am I doing? What do I have to do today? What are my appointments? What are my commitments? To other people and situations. I mean, and beyond that, there's like, for me, there's practice, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And whether that's practices that I'm leading formally or offering, or taking that 5 minutes before I collapse into bed, like that gets written down. And then if I get to that point and I don't feel like doing it, it's like, oh, what's that about? But like having constant reminders around me of practice. I mean, I've lost count of how many shrines I have here. Doing much like Stephen said, having time in nature, but again, the intentionality of doing the gestures in nature. And that's just like, unless the weather is really bad, and I don't even have an excuse not to do it then, because I've got damn good rain gear. So yeah, just like being really intentional, and like, no, this is important, and yeah, to be nice to hang out with this person or that person, but practice comes first for me. And next to that, ensuring that other people have a place to practice sort of comes second. So
Okay. Oh, it's so great. So I'm just writing these things. Don't worry about it. We'll discuss them all together shortly. But okay, I mean that was
I just, sorry, I love what you said. I love that you're using the word design, and that's also something that you had shared. And there's that's for me where the intentionality and the commitment comes from.
yeah.
Like you can't design something without being fully present in that process.
Right. I love it. Beautiful. All right, dear amazing Sangha. Let's look at this for a moment and just feel like we are looking for the space in our day, for spaciousness, for we're looking for the activities that support us. We're looking for the reminder practices, the ways we remind ourselves environmentally, um, in our communication, in our inner thoughts, all the different levels, body, speech, mind. We're looking at, um, you know, how do we prioritize things and what is or is not practice? Like view comes back in, right? And like, how do we, and this, you could say, okay, everything's practice, right? Come on, sure, sure. But then again, we're talking about not divorcing from the whole experience of our humanity as a practitioner, and sort of we're taking ourselves on the path, right? We're not leaving ourselves behind. We're trying to find a way for our awakening to include our humanity, right? And to have those two levels inseparable. But again, there are no easy answer to these questions. It felt like every one of you, I kind of wrote a question, tried to write a question that was sort of like a riddle or a koan, because it's not going to be like there's some answer. But it opens this process of like, what are the questions we need to have? And so hopefully by the end of this session, each of us will have at least a question that we can bring forward into this practice of seeing each day as a lifetime and designing that lifetime to really meet the whole human needs, join heaven and earth, the ultimate and relative of our practice, so that each day, even if we had a busy day or didn't have enough time for this or that, which happens, right? But that day we related with that day in the best way that we could, and with as much care and artfulness as we felt we could muster from our inspiration. So we'll work on that in the next section together, and I'll try to model like a little, some things that I do. I didn't get into it here because I was like, wait, we'll just do that when I'm drawing, but I'll share some of the things I try to do, and then we'll all just keep dialoguing about it. All right, let's take a 7-minute break. See you on the other side. Right. Oh, hold on. Okay. So, why is this still having volume? So weird. Are you hearing me okay, Janet?
There's a little bit of an echo. I can hear you, but there's a tiny bit of an echo still.
Yeah, I don't know why. So weird. I turned down the volume. Let me see. That's off. Got it. And the volume is all the way. Oops. Oops. Volume.
Actually, for whatever reason, it seems better now.
Huh. Well, I can hear a little bit. It's okay as long as you can hear me. It's okay if there's a little echo. Yeah. So I wanted to use this as a kind of, oh, there it is. Hmm? No. How does it work here? There we go. That's off. That's so weird. I don't know. Anyway, all right. So here there's a little map here. We have sunrise and sort of the beginning of the day. And these circles are going to be, we can kind of think about them how we want. Like what these different overlapping sort of sections that aren't fully discrete, right? They overlap, but they're gradual spectrum of changes throughout the day. The sun rises, and you could say in the morning, it's, you know, there's this brightness and shining in the middle of the day. And then at sunset here, the sun going down, and then we have nighttime. You know, we can even add a star, why not? Now this also indicates here there's a big shift here and a big shift here, and then this, so what we would say here is this is connected to birth, being born, right? And what we come out of, which isn't on this chart, is the bardo, the sleep, where we have dreams and appearances. And so when we come into this life, we already have a certain kind of karmic shape going on, right? It's not like we come in totally blank. Each morning, we come in with a particular formation, you could say. You know, all sorts of, I don't know, I'm just making up little squigglies, right? And then, but on another day, it's, you know, maybe it's more like that, right? So there's no telling, because karma is always changing. But we bring, you know, the question is like, what is the preceding condition? So what is it that we're bringing into the day, into this birth? And then you could say the childlike part of the day is that waking up period, getting reoriented, right? And you know that at this time, what is really important here, and I would say is the 21 gestures, right? Or setting the view. And so we could just say, however you do that. In our mandala, in our sangha, in our approach, we have the cycle of teachings of those 21 mudras. But if you say, really, it's just about practice, but especially setting the view. And what the view is how we look at things, right? So it's important to check in with the existing karmic stream we brought in, that was meant to be an arrow there, into the day, and sort of check in with that. But also, I'm pointing out something interesting. While every day might have its own shape, each day is always the same in that there's start, middle, end, right? Beginning, middle, end. There's different stages. Child, you could say adolescent, you know, adult, you know, older, and elderly, and dying, right? So if you think of it just as these stages of life, kind of, right? And it's not, it doesn't have to be that this is some exactly how we're like checking in saying, oh yeah, I feel this way, or I feel this way, but these things are happening energetically because of the world and the outer and inner conditions, right? So that's always the same. That kind of quality of change that is reliable is that every day is going to have these basic things in place. But every day is going to come in with a different kind of karmic energetic pattern, right? So the first skill we need is essentially some kind of attunement to and the view. So how do we attune? In some ways, we attune by doing practice and feeling ourselves. I personally think the order that I've been working with mostly is more like practice, view, attunement, in that order. So I will sort of do, some relating to body, some lujong, some 21 gestures, some sitting, or any order of that. And then, how am I today? What is going on in me? And I just wanted to go back to the notion of what we were all saying. And if I just look at the chat, there's this importance of spaciousness, knowing what that is for us, this importance of having a way to connect with ourselves. And Stephen, I didn't write this, but I could have, is your hand on your heart, right? A perfect way to attune throughout the day. What am I feeling now? What about now? So when we do this, it's always now, right? So in another way, no matter what I'm talking about here, all of this is happening now. It's always now, at every point, right? So when I'm looking at these concentric circles here, each one is now, right? And that's why there's that overlap, because that's also symbolizing the nowness. It's not really, it's a weird thing, right? Time is passing, the outer conditions are changing, but it's always now. So we establish the view and the practice, and then we attune. So I'm just going to say, I'll just say practice and view, and that's sort of in working with the karma that we've brought into the day. Then, from that, we attune and design. So what is designing? Designing is saying, okay, now I've had these circles go down to the middle of the day. This part's not really correct in terms of time. It's not totally aligned. I just ran out of space. But you get the idea that as the day is progressing, hopefully, honestly, if this was aligned, it would be more like up here at the very beginning of our day, right? Because if a child doesn't receive milk, they die. If a child doesn't receive love and education, they can't thrive, right? So what we want here is to start, just like a baby needs nourishment, right, in our birth, we need to do these things at the beginning of the day. And I've long thought about this and been so flexible with myself and other people around, oh no, whenever you can fit in practice. But over the years, at least as a householder practitioner or a person in the world, a yogi that lives in society and in the world, I find this is the only way it works for me. Again, if you do something different and it works for you, go for it. But that's how it's been. Now for me, designing and attuning are a singular process. Because if you don't feel yourself, you can't actually design something appropriate. Right? You're going to be saying, I will every day always only do the same thing at every time. And look, that's one way to live. It does make things very simple. But the problem with it is, what happens when in the middle of your day, you have this huge chunk of work and it feels very claustrophobic? It is not spacious feeling, right? It's overwhelming, and we think, well, shit, I had a bad lifetime. This life I had bad karma and it didn't work out. Well, I don't believe that. I believe we can be more resourceful and creative. So what we're realizing is that actually spaciousness is always nowness. As Longchenpa said, within every moment and within everything, we can find what's called the imperturbable rest, because the nature of every moment and situation is space. So we don't need to create just like a ton of time, although that is an amazing way to create space. But say we don't, we don't have to have all this time to just be free and spacious, but we can design a life where okay, I want this much space in every day. We can move towards that. That's fine. You know, you get to decide how you want to create your life. There are consequences to different things when it comes to how we manage our lives. It's complex. But what I'm talking about is the skill of when we design, we actually look through attunement at what is possible in this day. And therefore each day after we spend a little bit of time doing that. So what does that look like for me? It literally is as simple as after I practice and after I establish the view and I see my own personal karmic stream, what I'm bringing in, because I attune, then I design. And what designing looks like, and I'll just draw it here, is you could even say, okay, say you woke up late that day and it's 9, and then you could do a little count, like a little thing, write it out, right? This is my day. And you're like, well, I know I'm going to be working at this time. Whoops. Yeah. What is that? It's a phone call. I've never had that before. Relentless telemarketers. All right. So say you have this period of work, right, where you have to do a lot of work in this section. Okay, how do you design a way of remembering the view that you bring into your work? So you could literally say, I'm going to try to practice by setting a timer while I'm at work that goes off with a vibrate, doesn't interrupt anything. And every time it does, do a gesture and then go back to work. Or, you know, like whatever, right? It could be something like that, but you understand that that's very particular and personal. I'm thinking more, instead of getting into the specifics, I'm just talking about the generals, right? When I design a day, I'm actually looking at this kind of time reality of there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to the day. Every day. You can count on that. And every time the sun goes down, having some sense of protector practice can be helpful. Right? Like maybe offering tea or saying a little chant or just noticing, oh, we're moving into the darkness. How can I protect my awareness and mindfulness? That comes back to the key skill of attunement. So throughout the day, really another way we could look at it is every nowness is about attuning. And that attunement reminds us of what? Of our design. What is the special conditions, the karma of this day, and how do we work with it in a way that we're like saying, okay, this is a work of art. Today is how am I going to take care of my relative self, remember the view, and see that I can work with one day as a lifetime. If you tell me I have to like think of it in terms of hundreds of days or all this stuff, it gets overwhelming, right? But if we look at each day as a holistic thing in and of itself, very powerful, right? Yeah.
So you just said something that twigged something for me. You said that attunement brings us back to design. That when we attune, we kind of
Yes.
reflect back on our design.
Yeah.
Don't we also reflect back, or I feel like there's an invitation to also reflect back on the view.
Well, at this point, I think we can move into this discussion together. This is great. Yeah. That they're inseparable because the view is coming from our practice, from the teachings, from study, and then the design is a reflection of the view. We're not designing something without the view. So the view is necessary. And if, you know, I've left the drawing, but if I'll just do it with my hands. If I was, view continues, out of view emerges attunement. Out of attunement continues. Out of attunement emerges, how do I do that? There we go, design. So view continues and births attunement. Attunement is view, attuned to you. view attuned to you is how you design. So it really is that continuation or continuity. And just like with the gestures, when we stack them, it's like we don't leave behind the spaciousness to move into Tonglen, but we continue the awareness of it, right? So it's foundationally, we're stacking or layering, you could say. But we have to start with the view, because if we start designing without the view, we could design a day that doesn't have Dharma at its center, right? And that will create problems for our practice. We'll be imbalanced. If we have the view, but we don't attune to ourselves, we'll have Dharma as the primary, but we'll forget what's going on in our life. Say we woke up with the karma of, I'm in a really bad mood, I'm stressed out, I feel groundless, but I'm gonna but what's most important is doing Dharma practice. And it's like, wait, what is Dharma practice? What kind? Right? For us, that can mean a lot of things. Sure, sitting meditation, the 21 gestures establishing the view, but then when we're going in nature, when Stephen, you're driving and you place your hand on your heart, that attunement keeps bringing us back to the view, and the view keeps bringing us back to attunement, and attunement keeps reminding us what's the design. What is our design? And the design is the container. It's essentially a portable container, right? That you carry with you. For myself, although I was saying, it's always sunrise, daytime, afternoon, and nighttime, and then sleep, right? That's true. Every day is the same that way. But every day is populated differently by what's going on in our inner world and in our outer world, the different conditions, both outer and inner. And so how do we synthesize and see it as an art form to go, okay, today is a day of work. It's a day of I'm spending a big chunk of the middle of the day working. And during that time, while I'm working, how can I design a day so that there's actually what practices or what things can I do that are attuned to the view and my needs, attuned to me and the view, and then my design at the beginning of the day reflected my intention to return to those things during the work period, say. So it's a layering. Yeah. And it's an iterative process, right? If we get too fixated on, damn it, I'm not remembering my design, we attune. Well, I'm really hurt. And we bring the view. Well, I love myself and I'm trying my best. Now I attune to that. Okay, what's the view? The view is to find spaciousness right here. What can I design that will help me connect with that? Like what creativity here? I can go for a walk for 5 minutes. I don't let myself do that usually. I'm going to be 5 minutes late for a thing, but I'm going to go do, or, I'm not saying that's, it's not, the particulars get very personal and creative, and we each have to figure that out, right? But this attunement and this designing and the view, to see them as a fluid process, how does that feel? What what comes up when you hear that? What seems like a challenge for that? What seems like a question you have about that? Or not that you have to have a question or a challenge, but sometimes it's helpful to look at that part just to kind of strengthen the prajna and the critical intelligence around, well, wait, what is this? How would this be hard for me? Where would I, because we could say how, I love it, Nick, that's great. And I'm like, okay, good luck. And then we see it later. And then you're out there, wait, this is actually hard. So I like to go to what's hard, not because that's more important, but just sometimes while we're together, let's look at what's challenging about this so that we can move towards more confidence in being able to do it if we want to do it, right?
I would, I guess in my perfect world, I'd have a little nick right here on my shoulder. and you'd be going for a walk, and our life size would even be better. But I mean, seriously though, I mean, that would give me the, I would imagine that would give me the inspiration and the focus to really come into the present moment. And, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I'm so grateful that, Janet's always there in the morning, because that makes me, sit. I mean, it's just, and that's been going on for a long time, that just knowing that somebody's going to be there, and that brings me, if that wasn't there, I would have much more difficulty doing a formal practice, for sure, for me. That's what I'm saying. So if you were with me, Nick, all day long, then gosh, I'd be like, wow. I feel like we would be walking around this sacred mountain all the time, or I just would imagine that would be the, like, if I was going to die, I would want you to right beside me, whispering into my ear, okay, you're going through these bardos, Stephen. I'm with you.
Mm.
I mean, I've often thought of that, but it'd be wonderful to have you there. So that would be the ideal. So I guess for me, I have you in my heart, or I have Trungpa in my heart, even though you guys weren't there physically, just kind of remembering, that would be powerful.
That's beautiful, Stephen. I want to just highlight what you brought in, which is really important, which is the relational dynamic. That here we are, I'm talking about this like, okay, as an individual, you design your own day by yourself. Yes, but just for the simplicity of talking about it today, to get the idea, yes, I'm saying it. But actually, you're right. This is not happening in a vacuum, and we are Sangha. And the way Janet has been offering, our sitting space in the morning is just such bodhisattva activity. And I'm so grateful, and thank you, Janet, for doing that for us, because it's like, I know you talked about how that's an important part of your practice. You said, I like to offer things because it helps you too, but what you're doing for others is huge, right? And it goes both ways. Stephen, when you talked about walking with me in the park, whether I'm small or large, I get excited because I'm like, I want to do that. Like, that's what I want to do with my time. Right? I want to like be with you all and do go deeper. Like, that's what lights up my firefly, right? So like, I feel like those things are, I'm so glad you brought that in, because here I am, I'm talking about it as this individual designing, right? We have our own karma, our own view practice, our own attunement, and our own design, and then we live our day, sure. But I'm so glad you brought that in, because that's actually a huge part of the context, right? It is ultimately a relational practice because the reality is relational. So um, those things you brought in are really important, and they're a big part of it. And so let's not leave those out. I'm glad you brought them in, and they're welcome. And then okay, so part of what I'm hearing from you is that you would be challenged, or a challenge for you in designing a day or attuning and bringing the view in, is if you don't have that collective practice, it's hard, right? It's really hard on you to do it alone. And I'm with you, like, although I just even knowing that you're practicing, and if I can't even be there, I'm practicing with you. It's true every day, and I'm always I'm now every morning I practice whether or not I can do it with that session or not. And that's important to me, though, to know that you are. I can't tell you how much that means to me, because that is like a grounding thing of like, we are in this together, and that's like amazing. Like, I am so grateful for that. You also brought up recollecting the teacher, and throughout the day. And, that's devotion, right? That's a design element to say, okay, the view is I want to be in the view of my true nature and be compassionate and wise. The attunement is I woke up grumpy because I got in a fight, or I, whatever, or something. And the design is today I want to remember and utilize, calling on the blessings and calling on the teacher. And I'm going to make sure I do go to the park. And if you do, great. I'm going to make sure when I'm driving that during the driving, um, you know, every time I stop the car to get out, before I get out, I like remember that I'm not alone, that the blessings are right here, that the all pervading teacher is with me. And then when I open that door, you're like opening the door to blessings, and then you get out, I mean, just like little things, like, it's like, I'm talking about creativity. In design, it could be creation, but design has this element of trying new things each day. Novelty itself isn't the point, although it does get our attention as human beings, but it's also hard to be novel because we're very patterned creatures. I mean, look, we have the sunrise, the sun going down, the night. It's every day. So no wonder we're like that too. But if we can design in our design point at the day, what is a new thing each day or a different thing we can do that could express our devotion or what would support? So that's just an idea. Yeah.
Nick, could you talk just a little bit more about that? The difference between creativity and a new thing and novelty. I mean, I get novelty can be a sense where that's like the end point.
Yeah.
Versus the vehicle, but I just love to hear a little bit more about that.
Right. Oh, that's great. I'm going to go to my whiteboard. I'm not going to do the fancy one I had with my iPad. I'm just too complicated. It was fun, but I'm going to do this. All right. So I'm going to say creativity, design, and novelty. I would say with creativity, it's about spending time with, well, that looks like, I'll make that a line, but with inspiration. So there's an I, right? And some time, and I would say structured time. So I'll just go ST. Hope you can stick with my shorthand here. So there's the sense of creativity. There's a little structured time of contemplation or of intentionally, and this is connected to design, right? That structured time. And then the creativity, though, is really the feeling of inspiration getting the space of design, right? So we create a space for inspiration and design. And you know what Pablo Picasso said about it? He said, you want to be inspired, then paint every day. Because he said, in other words, he was like, you have to be painting when it hits you. You can't expect to be inspired and then paint. That was his point, that it doesn't, that's going to be very hit or miss. Interesting point. So creativity is an energy, and then design is a sort of space we create for the inspiration to come through. It's almost like, if I were to draw a picture here, it's like, the vase here is space. I mean, the space or time. The inspiration is the liquid that gets poured in. The pouring is the act of design. But the creativity is a little mysterious here. It's like, what got you a spark to pour the water in the vase? Maybe you got thirsty, right? So creativity here is connected with our devotion and our desire, our thirst. It's letting ourselves feel that. I hope this is not too complicated. Okay. Novelty, on the other hand, novelty often relies on external changes, things that are coming that are new, like, oh, I met a new person, or I saw a new TV show, or I had a surprising letter come in the mail, or you know what, I went to get the picture the other day and it wasn't there. So novelty I often look at as an outer phenomenon. Whereas what I look at with creativity is an inner phenomenon. Now they're not exclusive, right? But that's the reason I'm distinguishing them, because if we just wait for novelty, it sometimes is like, it's almost like we could be looking for it, but we can get drawn out of ourselves by doing that, right? And now if novelty strikes us, which I love, right, is something happens unexpectedly, let it wake you up. That's one of my translations of one of the slogans, right? But I hope, does that help clarify what I mean?
Yeah. The locus of it's not that there isn't a co-creative process, but it's not looking out there for something to do that spark per se, without taking responsibility. Like, how can we be responsive to it? But it's our responsibility in some ways to create you know, those the practices, but then also while we're doing the practices, having enough spaciousness with them that we can then get that spark. We've got room to hear and to listen to. And
I love it. I love it. The novelty that you know, it's difficult with inner novelty, because to me inner novelty is almost like a paradox. We're us. How do you, it's like saying surprise yourself. You know, it's like you can and you can't, right? You can, but you kind of knew you were doing it. With creativity, there is a co-collaboration. Let's bring it back to the relational element that Stephen brought in. What happens in the world? Ooh, this is good, right? So we have karma that we feel on the inner level from sleep and dreams and our previous day and our memories of the past. Then we're born into the day. We establish the view through practice and the gestures and sitting and being, and then we establish attunement. What is it that's the view and me? How are those two mixing, like pouring water into water? Like, how are those two? Out of that, we can design, meaning there's a collaboration with our karma that we brought into the day, the karma of the outer circumstances of what our schedule is already in the day, the elements of the different times of day, the different kinds of practices we like to have. And it's almost like the better word would be synthesis. How do we attune so that we can design in synthesis with what's our karma, the situation environmentally of our day, and the elements of the view? So it's a view. I started to do like a math equation, but this is like view plus karma plus environment equals synthesis, right? When you through attunement, right? Through attunement. So if we're not attuned, we cannot mix view, karma, and circumstances of our day. We won't feel it. We won't really be knowing like, oh, okay, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, why. So it comes through that attunement. And then we can start to synthesize. Now, when I said something new each day, that's almost, the novelty is, there's obviously the outer novelty, which is everything is our teacher. So if a siren goes by, you know, whenever I hear the you know thing, I'm not often in places like that anymore. But if I hear it, I'm like, protectors, right? Come back to the present. What are the protectors? So see a bird. I see a certain kind of bird flying. What is that? Okay, oh, notice the hawk or the heron, or you know, like, let that wake you up. So there is a collaboration with the senses, right? You can have novelty from the outside, but if you're not attuned to the view and saying this day is unique, this day as a lifetime is unique, how do I utilize it? How do I see it? Doing something new in practice is almost, maybe another way of saying it is taking our practice into a moment that we haven't before. Like just once a day even could be a form of novelty in practice. Like, oh, I'm usually when I'm like, you know, looking at my email, I get kind of like tight and pissed off or something, or I'm anxious, and you know, and just taking a moment of look at the email and you know, I don't know, like let the email come into your heart, let the screen enter into your heart, become one with the email for a moment. So if we can remember to do the gestures in a novel, weird way, that's a culture. That's more about culture, the culture of the novelty being synthesis. So it's a mix of outer circumstances and inner inspiration. But the reason I bring it up is if we can do that, do you know how it's a little bit uncomfortable? It's like outside of our comfort zone a little bit when we do something like that. It's in the growing zone a little bit. It's like, that wasn't exactly, or maybe it didn't even work. Like we didn't feel great about, but it was I guess I am saying surprise yourself. I guess I'll just own that. It's about surprising yourself, even once or twice a day.
Nick, I loved what you brought up before. You said when you open a door, you know, feel like you're entering the sacred world. And I love that because that's a concrete example that I know right now you just gave me, that I can take with me from now on. And whenever I'm opening up a door, that's going to remind me that I'm entering a sacred world.
Yes.
And I think there's something for me that's very, it's so good that it's concrete like that. As I go through whenever I open a door now, that's going to trigger me to think of the practice. So, but then when you were just answering or talking to Lenny about what you said, Ben, or if you see a bird or, you know, a crow goes by or a hawk, but that's the same thing. It's like everything then becomes our doorway or our gateway. But I mean, for me, it's great because it's just like how you turn me on to the blessings, and I relate it to either seeing the sunshine on the water or going through the trees. That's similar to this door, you know, just opening a door can be that simple. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's a practice that then I can start relating it to like a bird flying by or hearing the chimes.
Oh, I love that, Stephen. I love what you just said. It's exactly what I'm intending. And whoops, this is a mess. Forget that. All right, let's start over. Tabla rasa here. So it's as if the teacher as phenomenal world, right, which is what happens in our day, is always there. But because we start the day with the view, and this is morning, you know, going down here, and we'll say at night times here, and this is just always happening. The phenomenal world is always our teacher. The view, the practice, you know, the attunement, and then we're saying design, which is just looking at the day and saying, how can I bring this in? I know I have to do this today. Maybe I need to fit in a walk because I know I'm going to be, that phone call later is going to be challenging. You know, and it's literally like, by writing or designing something, our eye of Dharma sees the teacher as phenomenal world more clearly. It's almost like we're opening that eye by designing. Do you see what I mean? That's what creates the culture. And the culture is the key thing. It's a culture that sees the bird. It's a culture that opens the door. It's a culture that reminds us that the gestures are available at any moment. And, you know, one thing I've done that's like these little formulas is like, literally like, you know, remembering aliveness, flashing, just flashing on it. Then flashing on impermanence, literally this long. I'm doing it real time. Sometimes I skip remembering a lot of my life because it takes too long. And I'll just drop into feeling like, okay, what am I feeling right now? I remember the view, I dive in, and then sometimes I'll just arise in the 13th gesture of self as deity and just this sense of bright, shining confidence that I am exactly, I'm just perfectly who I should be. And you are perfectly who you should be. You are beautiful. You're perfectly the way you are in all of your being, and you're made of light, you know, and you're confident, you're, you know, and it's like, and I go, it's like you shine that, right? And then I can enter into something, some dynamic, some situation, you know, so it's, or just, I can just change the course of my day a little bit. But I literally cast those spells. That's a short version when I do. It's 4 gestures, and it just connects me with my nature and the confidence. And inserting that throughout the day, it drives me nuts because our nervous systems are not designed to feel rewarded fully by that, because even though it rewards our nervous system in the moment, it's subtle, so we don't instantly crave doing it over and over and over. Like, I find, even though it's good for us, and if we did it 21 times a day, we don't, like, somehow it's hard for our bodies to just do it or be incentivized to it. Now, it's different with sitting practice because you're longer and you're doing it for a longer amount of time, and your nervous system does kind of go, I kind of need that. Like eventually your nervous system kind of craves practices. I value what you're doing, because it's a long enough amount of time where you can, but these short moments for us actually are very impactful, but the body won't always. It's like if somebody had a piece of chocolate and you're like, I want that chocolate, right? Your body's like, I'm sorry, I don't know. I know you don't want to have the chocolate, but I want the chocolate. But we don't always have that with these on the spot gestures. I've been working with that. I don't know how you feel, but I've been really trying to see that. Now, what I find is I do crave longer practice, but it's hard for my nervous system to crave the shorter practice, even though I believe it is profoundly helpful. I could be wrong, but that's how I'm at. That's where I'm at right now with it. I'm really curious about that because I'm thinking of what is the reward and incentive system in the human body around food or around pleasure. Like if you had a pleasurable snack at 4 p.m. yesterday and it gets to be 3:55 today, I'll be damned. And if you know what I mean? Like if you look in the direction where you looked yesterday, suddenly you're like, I want the cookie. Like you don't even have to try to remember to practice. But that's because it's a very biological urge, right? It's a very habitual, it's coming from the nervous system. The problem with the higher lucidities of our subtle body is the nervous system does appreciate their regulation and the benefits, but it doesn't necessarily know how to crave those spurious little moments of practice, at least as far as I can tell. So we have to find ways to incentivize ourselves through what I call design, which is creating this culture, which becomes a positive habit. But without the design, I feel like it's harder to remember. And if I just work with each day and checking out throughout the day, attunement, what am I feeling right now? And that gesture, by the way, I think, Stephen, what you said, that hand on your heart, if we can all just do that one, attunement, again and again throughout the day, that's one of our best shots at going, okay, what do I need? Ooh, now my body can go, actually, I'd really love it if you do a gesture. I just forgot you know how to do that. You know what I mean? Like, so once you remember, the body's like, thank you, please do a gesture. But the body doesn't, in my experience, again, doesn't tend to be the one who says, do a gesture spontaneously. That would be amazing. And if that were the case, I imagine human beings would wake up very quickly and easily, right? I don't know. Again, I could be wrong. Prove me wrong. But
I don't know. I don't know that this is going to prove you wrong. And that's not really, not really my
no,
intention anyway.
no.
I'm just, there's something for me about repetition and the intentionality of empowering something.
Yes.
Um, like some of you have, you know, seen my surroundings in pictures, and God damn it, it's going to be a special person who spends any time in my bedroom. It's surrounded by Dharma shit. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And so is the rest of my apartment. I I I look at my cushions. I'm reminded of day as lifetime.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful.
I have two hangings like on either side of the door coming out of my bedroom. What am I committing to this morning? What am I committing to this trip to the wherever?
Yeah.
Um, what's important to me?
Yes.
And I'm not suggesting that everyone should get a tattoo. It's just although there have been many benefits, um, like quite literally, I have on one of my many shrines, I have a photo of Amitabha, and I glanced at it just before we started,
Yeah.
and there's the reflection of the candle flame in it, which reminds me of our liturgy, blazing Lord, you inspire us. When
Right.
beings have their greatest fear, you shepherd them all to the clear light of your own. Like that's my view, my practice, my design right there.
Oh, I love it.
Because I said so. because I chose to make that important, and I chose to empower everything in my surroundings to be a reminder of practice.
So you're talking about culture and
Yes.
ritual, and this is why we have reminders, and those are ritual or culture. This is what I think is so interesting. We're not just practitioners like in a different culture trying to learn how to do these practices in the modern world. We're also creating a culture, and this goes back now to Stephen as well, talking about the relational aspect, right? And so, and Janet, you're talking about all the symbolism that you have offered to yourself and your environment to remind you, and then and then you were saying, Stephen, I love the door opening, and you, Janet, were saying, I look at the wall hangings, which are these beautiful reminders of Dharma, the Om Mani Padme Hum, and the auspicious symbols, right? That's the ones I have, and you have, and they're out on either side of the door, and so it's like you're about to go through the door, and I could have a culture of like, yeah, there's just some things on the wall. Or I could go, wait, let me remember compassion. Let me remember auspiciousness. Now let me open the door of liberation. And these are very traditional things, actually. These practices of, the bodhisattvas would talk about this. I open the door of liberation. I pour water in the glass to give to all the thirsty beings in the hungry ghost realm. It's not like you have to think every moment only about those things. The point is we just need enough of these kinds of environmental reminders and or inner culture. And what I mean by design is, the cool thing is you get to design it attuned to yourself, right? It doesn't have to look like, well, yes, it can, we are all giving each other examples, but it's very personal, right? So we have the view, we establish it in the morning, nurturing the profound milk of eternal doubtlessness, right? We nurture our child into the attunement. Then from that practice and attunement, we design. And from that design, we have a culture throughout the day. And I care about your culture. Yeah, okay, Lynn, take care. I have a culture. You have a culture. We have a culture. And it's important to remember we share this culture. Now, we may do things slightly differently in each of our homes or lives, and we have different jobs and different, family situations or not, and constraints and all sorts of things. So it doesn't have to be the same. But the fact that we can share this and we can look at these things and say, what are you doing to create a culture? And Stephen, when you say, oh, I would like to remember and call the teacher more, do it. Do it. And then my question is, what will help you do that? You might not have a tattoo, but you might have your mala. You could, yeah, your watch. I think somebody gave you that. Yeah. Whenever you look at it, it is our culture. That is that, and then you can literally, and I will throughout my day, the hand on the heart and going, what do I need? And sometimes I need, oh my gosh, I take off my mala. I'll be driving. I pay attention on the road, but I'll have Amitabha, the light of Amitabha, and I'll be like, oh, mommy, feel the light coming in, sending my heart light back, mixing those lights while I'm driving. Because what happened? I was feeling anxious. I was concerned about something. A big wave of emotion came up. And I thought, oh, I want to be here for myself, but I need help. So I call on Amitabha. And then suddenly I feel this tender sadness of like, oh, that wave was so beautiful. Oof. Kids always do this when they're pretending to drive. I'm like, damn, that'd be dangerous. But anyway, it's just very subtle. I'm driving, same thing. And it's like, all of a sudden, this is the retreat. This is the practice. Because we train so much in awareness in our system, we don't need to we can be talking, we can be driving, we can be doing any activity and holding the view. There is no activity that can prevent the view in our view, because our view is embodied, and it includes body, speech, and mind. And it is the pervasive, never-ending awareness that's aliveness, right? It is not something that is ever absent. Our challenge is not that we need super special conditions, although we do need retreat, and we can talk about that, and we do need all that stuff, and that's great. But we also need daily practice that is attuned to our actual day and situation, inner and outer, and that we actually spend a moment. And I find writing on a piece of paper the time out and saying, how, like, what is my day? Do little drawings for the, what's happening at the different times. And then, or next to that, you can say, write a question like, what is the focus of my practice today? And then you could say, I want to remember 21 times to do this. And there's literally, I remember Mingyur Rinpoche saying this, you could do it he would say 3 times and move your way up to a higher number. But 3 times is fine, 7 times. But actually saying today I want to remember to do the sequence I talked about of invisible aliveness, preciousness, commitment, and then arising as the deity or bringing the blessings down. I want to do that sequence 7 times today. That's a part of my design today. And then we actually, one way you can track it, if you have a phone, there's a little counter app I can send you. You just keep track, or you can even write on a pen on here, or you could just say, I'll just do it at every hour or every time I look at a clock. But it's building that kind of, and then the next day, you don't have to do the exact same thing. But yes, concrete things, Stephen, really do matter. Like opening the door, you can just do that and have that added to what you do. But what I'm saying about the design time is that it's a special moment before you leave, after you finish practice, before you enter your day, where you actually might write out and say, this day is a precious lifetime. How can I make sure that I see this day as an art form? What practices do I really need? And I will promise, and it could be, I just promise to attune 7 times today. I promise to try. And if I forget, I forget. That's great feedback, right? That's not a failure. That's a mirror. But if I attune again and again, even if we're already doing it, the reason I'm saying making this extra step is it creates the culture, right? That's what we want to start to build, is this culture, because eventually, if the culture gets strong enough, it does come into our body's nervous system, and we do start to just actually do these things, and then our path is much easier. And I think in some ways we've all achieved some of that. I'm not saying I was teaching this today as if we've never done them before, just because I wanted to make it really clear. Actually know that all of us, the 4 of us, all do have this culture in our lives, right? I'm just teaching it as if it were brand new to make it really clear. But I actually know that you do this. We all have talked about how we do it. I think for me, this extra step of adding in the design before we enter the day it's like literally planting a calligraphy dot on a page and writing something. There's something about that commitment that the line is now there. I wrote this thing. And if you don't want to write, you don't have to, but at least taking the time to say to yourself, this is my design for the day, or my, I'm looking at the day and I'm thinking, these are some of the things I'd like to make sure that I make room for.
Can I make a request?
Sure.
I know that we've gone over,
Gotta wrap
and
up.
I'm super sensitive to that. But this just popped up so strongly when Stephen was asking about, wishing that he had a little nick on his shoulder or a not so little nick beside him. And this is something that I've invited us into in social meditation. We've done it in our gatherings, just taking a moment and connecting with each other on the screen. And the feeling that we can get from that, like that's real. Like we are with each other. Always, even when we're not in the same room.
Yeah, thank you, sweetie. Maybe we can do that while dedicating the merit. All you sentient beings, I have a gooder bag of mention. As soon as you have this confused dimension, people in the western Sukhavati, and once you're born, complete the
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah.